Have you ever really looked at your dinner plate and just wondered, how did all of this get here? The coffee might be from Brazil, the rice from Asia, the vegetables from just down the road. It's this incredible global puzzle, and today we're going to put some of those pieces together. So, to get our heads around this huge global system, let's start with a really simple question. Why don't we see any farms in Antarctica? I mean, the answer seems obvious, right? It's way too cold. But that simple fact, it actually reveals the single most important rule in all of agriculture. And that rule is this. We humans don't just get to decide where we farm. We're in a partnership with the planet. You see, agriculture is this massive collaboration between our own ingenuity and a set of environmental rules that are, well, they're non-negotiable. Okay, so before we can even begin to understand the different types of farming out there, we have to understand those rules. What exactly is the planet telling us we can and can't do? Well, it really boils down to three main things. First, you need good soil. It's the reason the Great Plains in the US are a breadbasket, while a sandy desert, well, isn't. Second, you need the right topography, the shape of the land. Flat land is awesome for huge fields of corn, but the rugged, steep hills of Scotland, much better for raising sheep. And third, the big one, climate. And listen, it's so important to get this straight. Climate isn't just today's weather. It's the long-term pattern, right? It's that predictable system of temperature and rain that farmers have to count on, year after year. It's basically the blueprint for what's even possible. And what's so cool is how you can draw a straight line from a climate to a food. You see that warm, wet, tropical climate over in the Amazon or South Asia? That's perfect for growing things like rice and sugarcane. Or what about that hot, dry summer and mild, wet winter of a Mediterranean climate? Of course, you get olives, grapes, and citrus. The climate really does dictate the menu. So, given these environmental rules, these planetary guardrails, humans have developed two fundamentally different strategies to produce food. Two totally different answers to the exact same problem. A great way to picture this is to think about a high-tech workshop versus a vast open field. In the workshop, you're using a ton of tools, a lot of energy, and absolute precision in a small, controlled space to get a perfect result. But out in the open field, you're using a massive amount of land, and you're working with the seasons, with the rain, to produce something on a grand scale. So here's the deal. That workshop, that's what we call intensive agriculture. It uses a small amount of land but requires huge inputs. We're talking labor, money, technology, to get a massive yield per acre. The open field is extensive agriculture. It uses enormous areas of land with very low inputs, relying way more on nature to do the heavy lifting. All right, let's dive into that maximum effort approach first. We're going to start with the intensive side of the equation. You ever wonder how you get fresh strawberries in the middle of winter? A lot of the time, that's market gardening. These are usually pretty small farms, often close to cities, that use high-tech inputs like greenhouses and specialized fertilizers to grow high-value crops like fruits and veggies all year round. Then you've got something like plantation agriculture. Now, this is also intensive, but on a much, much bigger scale. Think of a giant farm in a developing country that grows just one single cash crop, like coffee or tea or sugarcane. It's called intensive because even though the farm is huge, the amount of labor and resources you have to pour into each acre is just massive. And check this out, because this shows a different kind of intensity. In a mixed crop and livestock system, it's all about efficiency. Farmers will grow crops specifically to feed their animals, and then they use the animal manure to fertilize the fields for the next crop. It's this perfect self-sustaining loop, but man, it takes intensive year-round labor to manage both sides of that equation. Okay, let's switch gears completely and look at the other strategy, working with maximum space. This is for when the environment is maybe a little less forgiving and the inputs are much, much lower. A classic example of this is shifting cultivation, which you often find in tropical regions. Farmers will clear a small patch of land, often using a technique called slash and burn, where the ash actually provides some nutrients for the soil. They'll farm it for a few years until the soil is pretty much exhausted, and then they move on to a new patch, letting the old one recover. It's a whole system dictated by the soil's natural limits. Now, in places that are just too dry to grow crops, you find nomadic herding. This might be the ultimate extensive practice. Herders move their animals, could be cattle, sheep, goats, across immense distances, following the seasons to find fresh pasture and water. It's a way of life that's perfectly adapted to some of the harshest, driest climates on Earth, like in Mongolia or Central Asia. Now, it's really easy to confuse nomadic herding with ranching, but there is a critical difference, and it all comes down to purpose. Nomadic herding is a subsistence practice. It's about survival for the family and the tribe. Ranching, on the other hand, is a commercial business. It's all about profit. Ranching is all about raising huge herds of animals on a fixed, massive piece of land. And the goal is to sell products, meat, hides, wool, on the global market. That wool sweater you might be wearing, it could have started out on a vast ranch in Uruguay. It's extensive simply because of the sheer amount of land each animal needs. So, when you start to put all these different strategies together, the intensive and the extensive, each one perfectly adapted to a specific environment, you start to see this amazing map of global agriculture emerge. You finally begin to understand the story behind your plate. And this really brings it all home. You can literally see it all laid out here. You've got the intensive market gardens of California, the super efficient mixed farms you see all over Europe, the extensive cattle ranches of Texas, and the vast migratory paths of nomadic herders in Mongolia. Each one is a totally logical solution to the puzzle the local environment presents.
It's a complex, beautiful, and incredibly logical system. But it leaves us with this one critical question for the future. As our population grows and our climate changes, are we going to need more intensive workshops or more extensive open fields? Which of these strategies will we rely on to feed the world of tomorrow?